Okay, this session is being recorded. So later on, we'll be able to share the link on the YouTube also. So feel free to ask questions. A remarkable journey, very admirable, with grand success in alien countries where the competition is of different nature. So all your skills, your learn while working, acquiring new skills, a chef turned entrepreneur, a very successful one at that. Yogesh, Yogesh, all yours. And please take them through and tell them your journey and how you managed to reach wherever you are now. Yeah. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Over to you, Yogesh.
So, yeah, thank you. So, can you all hear me? I hope so. Yeah, Arjun? Yes. Okay. So, well, it's my morning, but your good evening to all of you. Uh, I hope all of you are staying at home and staying safe. That's the main thing. We are talking today in a very different world. None of us imagined, things would change so much so quickly in our world. And so, what I will do is I will start off talking first, and then you can note down any questions you might have during the my presentation, and then you can ask me at the end of it. Uh, Arjun has asked me to dwell on mainly two topics, which is one is because I represent India here in the UK, which even the Indian embassy or the High Commission recognizes. We are ambassadors of India. We're promoting India every day here in London, and I am proud to be an Indian chef. So I would talk about Indian food, modern Indian food, in relation to uh, regional Indian cuisine, which is now coming up in India and even here. And then I would talk you through my journey as a chef, which has led me to now own restaurants and run restaurants, and how I educated or re-educated myself to be a entrepreneur. So if I start talking about, we all share one common interest, which has become our profession, and I hope it will be your profession in the future, which is cooking. Now you could be cooking or baking or anything related to food. I'll just introduce it as our industry. Uh, Being a chef is not something which is an easy profession. I must forewarn you. There's it's a lot of hard work. Even in today, it was harder when we were learning, but even it's still very hard work. It's There are no easy or quick success stories. You have to go through the grind, I believe, to be able to be a good chef first. And then if you're a good chef, then you can really live your dreams and be an entrepreneur as well. Now, being a good chef is means you have to have natural talent. So I compare chefs to other artists. Like, you could be an actor, you could be a painter, and for me, a chef is an artist as well. Obviously, we deal with food, and people may not relate to us, but I always compare ourselves as chefs, as artists, and our kitchens or our restaurants or hotels are say, if you compare ourselves to actors, so that's our stage. We go every day, we do our bit, and there's a new audience every day. So if you're an artist, you have to have that passion. That is the basic thing you need to have. Great passion for what you're doing, and then love for what you do, and obviously respect. So when I was becoming a chef, my role model is and I mean, I must tell you that you are in the best possible hands in India when you choose this career and to join IICA. He was my inspiration as well, and as a child, I remember, not a child, well, as a impressionable youngster, I remember going to Srinagar to his hotel and having uh, a meal which I've never had, a 5-star meal. And that has stuck with me for now almost 40 years. And that is what it said, well, this is what I want to do as well. And so that's how my journey started. It's never been very easy. It's always a lot of hard work, a lot of passion and enthusiasm, and the great thing about our profession is that even now, even after 35 plus years, every day I get up, it's the same energy to do more, to learn more. And that's how it has been all through. And I hope it could be the same for you all. Now, when I landed in the UK, I had trained as a French chef. So in India, we used to call them continental chefs. So I was trained in India as a continental chef with Taj Group. Then I specialized in French cooking in a hotel and in a catering college in Switzerland, and a big, nice hotel and very nice, posh French restaurant under a very good chef in Metropole Hotel in Geneva. So when I landed in London, much later, I had never worked in an Indian kitchen, but obviously being an Indian, you know your basics, but I'd never trained as an Indian chef. So I was offered this opportunity to run an Indian restaurant, having no basic knowledge. I mean, basic knowledge, yes, but no skill as such as an Indian chef. So I was always keen to see how I could, because for me, you see, if and for all of you, French cooking is probably the pinnacle of cooking. The fineness of their sauces, their spicing, and their cooking methods, I think, have taught something to everyone in this world. And they, once you master that, there's a lot of skill involved, and there is a lot of refinement involved. So I always was keen to use those French chef skills as an Indian chef. And that led to, I happened to be fortunate in a country where people were ready to pay for your experiments. So I was in a world where there's so many ingredients which you wouldn't normally use with Indian food, and you had this skill to match these two and come up with cooking. So this is the term which we started giving to and started calling it modern Indian food, because it wasn't traditional. It wasn't how you would cook, the authentic way. But we never went too far away. French cooking, the principles are very different to our cooking as Indian. But there is always, if you're a clever chef, or if you know your basics and you know where to bring about a twist and where to stop, you can marry the two cuisines. So this is what I did for many years, and the little recognition what I got was through my interpretation of modern Indian food, which my customers, which happen to be the white Brits of UK, could relate to as well, because I use the ingredients they are used to having and giving it an Indian twist. And their love for Indian food is well known. So it's what I did most of my career. But as a chef or as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to adapt, and you have to keep, you need to know what your customer demands and what your, the market things change. So you need to know all this. Uh, Now things changed, because Indian food, I must say, changed very quickly in the UK, thanks to people like me who did this 20, 25 years ago. But India was slower to adapt modern Indian cooking because we still loved the way we've been used to having. And but India now is completely different from what I used to work in. India now has, and at a point in around beginning of this millennium, we used to say that, we give better Indian food in London than you could get in India. But that's all changed, thankfully. India now has gone much ahead of, frankly, us. And India has, sorry, fantastic uh, modern Indian restaurant, which we inspire from, to look at as well. And obviously, the availability of ingredients has changed, and everything is now available in India. And the market has changed. The customers now are willing to try out the changes, which is all, I think, brilliant. And with the changes, obviously, has come the importance to regional Indian cooking. So, what I see now in the UK, that we are going back. So we are going back to more authentic recipes. We're going, because it's all customer related. So make sure, when you're a chef, it's not what you think is right. It's what your customer wants. That is the key for success. You need to understand the person who's shelling out their money to have your food, or, to eat from your bakery or deli, or, now the new concepts of these ghost kitchens are coming up big time. So whatever the customer wants, you have to understand the nerve of the customer first. So now I think regional cooking is really taking on, which I think is great because of the easy access to recipes for everyone. Um, People are discovering how great India is with food, and how many different, each. So I compare India to whole of Europe. So when people talk to me and say, "Oh, you are an Indian chef," um, so I said, yeah, but India is as big as Europe. So I'm still learning. And as Europe has so many countries and so many cuisines, India is one, and then each region has its own fantastic cuisine. And now regional Indian restaurants are coming up in UK as well, and doing very well. So I could give examples of Kerala food, for example, is really taking off because here people love seafood, and in Kerala you marry seafood with fantastic spicing. So that's one example. Then food from Bengal does very well here. So regional cooking is really coming up, and I don't think there is anything for me as modern, because people, it's now mainstream. People are now catching on all the tech, because with cooking, with authentic recipes, they were made by chefs who worked with limited resources. Today we have access to everything. We have fantastic technologies to help us cook. We have these cooking methods and these wonderful array of ingredients to work with, which give you an opportunity to go beyond authentic. So I just call it, well, modern Indian is beyond authentic. So where you have done a bit more to the authentic. But what is important is to be, you stick to your roots. You never move away from that. Once you do that, it becomes a hodgepodge, and then there is no clear lines. What we lack, or used to lack, not anymore, I would say, with Indian food, I will give two examples. One is a presentation. You see, we were always taught that you eat with eyes first. So our presentation with Indian food was not very inspiring ever, and it's hard because there's so much sauces, gravies involved, and it's hard to present it too well without compromising on the quality or the taste. And then the second thing is, we tend to, especially with vegetables, we tended to overcook and lose all the nutrition in the cooking process. So I worked on these two and I've tried all my life to present authentic Indian food in a more modern way, and also work on vegetables so that we don't tend to overcook. Use all the modern technologies and appliances available with us to try and cook and maintain the nutritional value as well. Uh, so that's one part of the journey, which has led me to now run restaurants, which is how you become an entrepreneur. You have to move out of your kitchen, the comfort zone of your kitchen, and then take on much bigger responsibility. Uh, so for me, if I come down to that topic, you have to be very clear that I'm sure many of you want to be entrepreneurs and to have ultimately your own business. Well, it could be a restaurant, it could be a bakery, it could be a deli, it could be a dark kitchen or a ghost kitchen or something like that, or anything related to food business. I feel with this COVID-19 situation, India may benefit much more. India may come out much better than most of the other advanced countries. And many of the industries might move from China to India. India might prosper much more quicker after this and recover much quicker. And that is always good news for the food industry, because any disposable income, people will want to go to restaurants, enjoy themselves more, spend more on eating out. So I think at the end of it, it is time for all of you to start thinking uh, what you want to achieve, because this time which you have at your disposal is to try and get to a situation where you know where you want to be in 5, 10, 15 years from now. To be a good entrepreneur or a person who runs their own food business, you have to uh, be able to come out of your comfort zone of the kitchen. You have to learn many other skills. First of all, what you need to understand is to have a clear concept. So what do you have to offer, which, something unique, what you can do, which others have not thought of yet, or, what is your concept? And then you have to be confident on your skills. That will only come through working hard. You've taken a good step. First step is joining a fantastic institution, which will give you a base to go and explore this industry. So from there, you need to now train yourself to be good at what you do. And not good is probably not good enough. You have to be exceptional in whatever field you end up taking. Uh, you know, and then you have to have a clear vision what you want to achieve, which is now is a good time to think about it. The concept has to be sellable. It's not something you've dreamed up. It has to have some footing. You have to know the market for that, whether whatever you're thinking will people will buy or not, whether it will end up you know uh, selling or not. And now that is not an easy thing to judge. So you have to keep up with all the trends, what's happening around you, and with that, you need to have a then clear plan of how you want to achieve your goal. The next thing, once you have the skill set and you're ready, then you need money, right? Now, the finance is again the most important thing for an entrepreneur. That is the key. Ultimately, you want to do business because you want to make some money, right? And you can only make money uh, by understanding how the maths works. So this is what you spend, this is what you get, and this is what your profit line is. So understanding finance or being an accountant is the next skill set you need to be able to be a good food business entrepreneur. After that, you have to develop a team around you. So you can't be good at everything. You have to. The good thing with entrepreneurs is that the basic thing you need is courage. So you have to have courage to go out and do things and take the risk. Once you're willing to do that, you will have your strong points. You may not be, you may be the best chef, but your accounts may not be good enough. But then you can hire the right people. So that is what it is. So you need to then develop a team around you, which can grow with you. We are in people's business. It's all about relationships with customers, relationships with your colleagues and people you work with. So once you have all these basics, then you work out a business plan. In your business plan, you have to clearly mention the concept, which should be convincing, your vision, how you want to achieve that goal, and obviously the arrangement of the company and all that. It has to make financial sense. You see, this is a restaurant business is one where you may be working at a loss if you open a new one, maybe for a year or maybe 6 months or maybe even 2 years. So are you ready for that? If you tend to look at all these celebrity chefs on TVs and people doing so well, restaurants full, you tend to feel, well, that's easy money. It's not. Believe me, it's not. You have to work really, really hard, and you should be able to take losses for at least 6 months or so. So it's not an easy business to get into, but very rewarding. Yes, once you've been through that, planned well, been through it, and you have reached a stage where it's successful and you can look beyond and explore. Now, then you have to do the market analysis, which again will be based on real understanding of the market around you, places, things to. Unless you have these basics, you can't really be an entrepreneur. For me, I was lucky to be offered to own the business I used to work for. I was happy to take it on and learn all these skills which I've been talking about and be able to get to where I've reached. Uh, I can't think of anything else because this is what I can do best. I can't think of a desk job. I could never have done it. This is one of the careers where you can really follow your passion and then even make money out of it. So it's all for me. It's been a great journey, and I hope I can inspire some of you to follow this journey. The the route is not easy, but at the same time, it's very rewarding. Uh, and what I followed in my time and age when I was younger and looking for, you see, the best thing a chef's career offered you was a chance to travel abroad, which used to be a big thing 30 years ago. So, where you could go abroad and you could get a job, people were willing to hire you outside India. So, that was my way. But now, options in front of you within India are huge. And India of today is so different from India of 30 years ago. And I think you have much more opportunities to do well back home. But you're also, obviously, if you follow your passion for Indian food, there is huge scope all around the world. Indian food is just picking up, and people like you, if you get into Indian food, you should be proud of Indian food. Our spicing, our cooking methods, our taste wise, believe me, nothing can match our cooking. And the whole world is now being exposed to the wonders of Indian cooking, which is beckoning. The whole world is beckoning people like you, who, if you take into Indian food, if not even within India, I see huge scope, especially in bakery in Delhi, and the new concepts now coming up with people becoming more aware of healthier food, of veganism, things like that. All these concepts are now coming up, and then this concept of dark kitchens, where uh, you know you could cook from one place and cook different kinds of foods uh, without anyone realizing, the Indian, Italian could be coming from the same kitchen. Uh, Going back to being an entrepreneur, as I said, you need to work on a financial plan, And now that can go in three different ways. You could have your own. It's all about money ultimately. Once you want to make your dream come true, it costs money. So you could start off small with your own money, say maybe in a dark kitchen. As long as you're confident your products will sell, and then scale it up, which is a process which takes a bit longer, which is what I ended up doing. But you could also take your plan to investors. There's investment to be had for the right kind of business model. And then there is crowdfunding, where you could have more than one investors. You can small amounts, your friends and family can invest in your business, as long as you're able to convince them that it's safe to invest, and that it is safe to put your money into it, and that one day you'll get rewarded for your uh, plan. So that's about what I need to say. Now it's up to you, really, if you have any questions to ask, Arjun.
Yeah, Yogesh, thank you very much. Uh, it does give an insight into your career route. I'm sure the students will have lots of questions. They will write on the chat box,
Okay.
and we can look at them and start answering. So you already have the question. Nidhi is asking.
I'll moderate these questions for you,
Okay.
if
Thank
you
you.
allow me. All right. So our first question is, um, we have a question from Simranjeet. Well, actually, Nidhi first. Nidhi says that she's 46 years old and is starting a new career, and she's looking to start work from home.
Okay.
So she's asking for advice of how that's possible. What is your advice for someone who's starting a new career at that stage of her life? And if she wants to start from home, what are your tips? If that's correct, Nidhi, does that sum up your question?
Yes. So I have understood what she's trying. You see, you're not the first
Nidhi, can
one
you hear me?
to Nidhi. Well, I can answer it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, good.
so I think you are not the first one to have uh, changing your careers. I think a lot of people, and I know quite a few doctors who've left and become chefs. Uh, and and what happens is, you are a fantastic cook. Your friends and families know that you are, and they always tell you, "Oh, you should get into food business. You're so good." Uh, so you know that you have the skill set. You have come to the right place to get the basic knowledge of what you should know about food business, what you should know about health and safety and food safety and all that. And you should know how to do food costing and make it a viable business, which you will probably learn where you are. I think the best way to start is through hiring someone else's kitchen and trying to go through delivery platforms into people's home. That is, I think, the new way of doing things. You don't need a huge setup of a restaurant, which comes, if you would appreciate, with a lot of uh, financial backing. So a good way to start is through ghost kitchens or dark kitchens or whatever they call it these days.
All right, good. Thank you so much. We have another question here from our faculty, Chef Saurabh, sorry. Chef Saurabh is asking that how excited are people in England about modern Indian food? Is there any dish that you particularly find is really popular there in the context of modern Indian food?
So, thanks, Chef, for the question. About modern Indian food, if we talk about, uh, it was actually easier to do it here than back home in India when I started off. because I could experiment with, and people were ready to, buy it. So you could sell dishes you think of. Uh, you could sell them in restaurant, and people will buy. So it was easier for us. Uh, so I think uh, Indian food was always popular here, but they are, and still a lot of substantial number are owned by Bangladeshis who were not trained chefs, who would have taken up restaurant business as as a means of making money. So there was huge, always been a huge interest with Indian food. It's only now that big names from India has also started coming into London to open modern Indian restaurants, which is, I think, great, which is fantastic. And a dish which is very popular here is very close to our butter chicken, which is chicken tikka masala, which happen to be a national dish of UK, more popular than fish and chips. So yeah, a version of that plated well is, I think, the most popular restaurant dish in London.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for
All right,
the.
fantastic. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chef. Uh, then we have a student Simranjeet who's asking us, who's like to ask you that how did your early career choices lead to where you are? So were there any big steps or any big decisions that you took to help you reach where you are today?
So I was a kitchen trainee at Taj, working in Taj Palace Hotel. I was one of the opening teams there. And after 3 years, I wanted to leave. And a grand chef called Chef Saraswat. If you don't know him, you should
Oh
Google.
yeah,
If
of
you should
course.
don't know him,
No,
you
no,
should
we
Google
know.
him.
He was a legend.
Okay. Yes, he is a legend. So he called me to his cabin and said, you don't you want to be a chef de party in this Taj Grand Hotel one day? I said, I'd love to be, but I can't wait that long. It was a long process and I was too full of energy. So I had to say no to him and move on. And that probably was one of the steps which took me where I am today, away from India and away from the regular route of going up in a hotel chain.
Excellent. So taking difficult decisions. I think that's the key, right?
That was a huge decision, getting into Taj training, kitchen training program, finishing it, but then moving on, leaving the job when you had all the opportunity to grow within the organization was a big step for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. All right, Chef. So we have a question from one of our students, Sushant, who says that how do you see the industry changing in the next few years? Well, I suppose keeping the current situation in mind, things are going to change dramatically. And I know you did throw some light on this in your conversation also. But what he wants to know is, as an entrepreneur or as an employee, where do you think these two roles are going to go in the next few years?
So I think, in immediate context, things look very bleak, frankly. And I'll speak of UK, which I understand the market more. India, things are different. UK, the restaurant business is very bleak at the moment. We can't see because we were the first one to ask to close, and we'll probably be the last one to reopen because they don't want, they want to maintain social distancing and all that. And they don't want people getting into restaurants and bars. So till we have a vaccine, I think the progress is going to be very poor, or we have to survive. But then I think a huge spike in demand. So say in 6 months or 1 year, when we have a vaccine for this virus and people are free to go out again, I see a huge spike in restaurant demand. Till then, I think restaurants which don't do takeaways or deliveries have to learn and adapt and be able to do that because people still want restaurant quality food, but probably at home. So a lot of restaurants, especially fine dining restaurants, which traditionally don't deliver, will probably have to remodel their business to do that now.
Well, that's actually happening here. We started seeing a lot of changes here as well, chef, because we started hearing of hotels like the Andaz. There's an Indian hotel called the Rosier. All of
Yeah,
advertising that get their food delivered to your homes, which is never heard of.
Imagine a
So
yeah,
five-star.
imagine a five-star hotel advertising that order our food.
exactly.
Moria is doing.
So that's our changing world, you know. So we have to survive. But I think, hoteliers are very tough because that's how we've been trained. And we'll all pull through this and actually do well. And I personally think India will do exceptionally well out of this.
Lovely. All right, so we've got a few more questions. There's a student, Chitharth, who's asking, Chef, when it comes to regional food, regional cuisine, which of the regional cuisines, do you think is the most underrated or rather unexplored, but according to you has great potential? Because I know we know that you've done some great amount of work in regional food. And we were talking the other day about Kannada cuisine you had done in London with your
Yeah,
restaurant called Bangalore Express.
yeah.
So, any cuisine that comes to mind that has tremendous
I
potential?
think Northeast we haven't done much work on. Food from
Right.
Assam, Sikkim, Mizoram, and all these countries. Only Bengal in that region is known for its cuisine. But I think there is a lot of one of my colleagues, Chef Atul Kochar, has started a north eastern food concept in London. So that is a cuisine I think which is highly underrated, uh, which can really come up.
And according to you, what would you attribute that reason towards? Would you say that that's probably because of lack of talent, specializing in that cuisine, or do you think it's lack of awareness, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. What happens to be, uh, and I think it may be different now, but most of the chefs working in India or getting into these professions, either from North India, especially Punjab, or from Uttaranchal, the hilly areas, and few South Indians. And that's it, really, and a few Bengalis. But no one else has ventured into this profession, I think, from other parts of India. And they need to really take it on.
Well,
And
yeah. Well, I'd like to. I'm pleased to share with you that whereas you mentioned that those are the majority segments from where students or rather chef income, but we're very pleased to inform you that that is changing from our end, where we are very proud to have students from almost all parts and a great amount of representation from the Northeast also. So hopefully in the next few years, you'll see some great Northeastern chefs coming out and making some great changes in
I'm
that
so
front.
glad to hear that, Arjun, because you see, as I said, my knowledge about India can be dated. But this, is fantastic to hear.
No, I wouldn't say so, but
Yeah.
great. All right, Chef. So just a few last questions before we wrap up. So Soumya, our students, would like to know how should we recognize as to where how to start a career from a hotel or a restaurant? How do we judge which is the best being a culinary students? Where would we get the maximum exposure in terms of learning? So what Soumya would basically like to know is whether it's a restaurant or a hotel. A major dilemma that generally daunts a lot of students I've seen is how to choose which is a good start for them post their qualification.
For me, frankly, it's very easy. If you get into a hotel, please, that is the only way for me. Because, a hotel has a much more structured management system. They may have training programs. They have much more resources available to them to able to train you to be a good chef. And they probably have a better quality of employees already from whom you learn. So for me, if you can get into a hotel, nothing like it.
Okay, well that answers that. I think. Thank you very much. Then we have. Okay, I'm just trying to scroll through all the questions we've had, and I must
Thank
admit there
you.
are quite a few of them. All right, Lazia, one of our students, is asking, what advice would you give us as a first step? So, Lazia, I think though Chef has broadly touched upon a lot of advice that he's given you, but Chef, if in one line you could sum up one golden advice for our students, what would it be?
I think, you have to love your profession more than you love anything else, including your family. And you have to be ready to work hard.
I think that's perfect. Yeah, you're right. Then we have Jaswinder, who's a student of our first year program. He'd like to ask, when should one start working towards an entrepreneurship? So basically, I think everyone wonders that, whether it's right from the beginning, or should it be a little later in the stage when once they've seen more experience. When is it that you would advise an entrepreneurial journey should start?
I feel it's best if you have become personally capable enough to handle that business or a part of that business on your own. So that does require a lot of working for someone else before to sharpen your skills. So it is best if you can get proper training and wait till you yourself are confident about self. But I say that, but I also say that to be an entrepreneur, the only thing you need is to have the courage. Have to the courage to take that step. You may not be skilled yourself, but then you can always, build a team around you. But you have to have a clear concept. You have to have the courage, and you have to have the skill set. If you can't wait till then you should have the courage and the skill set.
Excellent. Well said, Chef. Well said. All right. So Nidhi, our student from our pastry program, would like to ask that, do restaurants, and I'm assuming Nidhi's asking in context of England, do restaurants outsource their desserts from outside? I mean, she's probably looking at this as an opportunity for herself or as an option for herself. So she'd like to ask you, in the current market situations, do you see a lot of restaurants outsourcing their desserts?
You see, if you go to a serious restaurant, they will always have a pastry chef. And I'm talking about Indian restaurants. But obviously, if you speak in general, most serious or fine dining or good restaurants will have a pastry chef. But she is right in thinking a lot of restaurants do outsource their desserts. But that does also mean that you could have your own business, supplying desserts, either frozen or ambient, to these restaurants.
Very well said. Neela, one of our students is asking that whether starting from home is a good option towards entrepreneurship. So I think what to expand on that, what she's probably wanting to know is that one is that, of course, everyone should maybe consider that option, but how far of a growth or opportunity do you think that is? Do you think that can expand?
So, you can definitely start from home. If you're confident, if your family or friends around you tell you that, you're a brilliant chef and you should really get into this business, that means there's something in you, right? Then you have come to this institution to learn the basics of the skills you need to get into a business. So it's a good start, but it will be a slow start. You may take much longer. But it is, yes, it is a very good start. The risk, you see, everything, as I said, revolves around the risk. And I think we should all appreciate that food business is a risky business. So you're really minimizing your risk by starting from home because you're cutting out all the expense of the infrastructure.
Okay, lovely. All right, Chef. So we have one more question. Other than kitchen, this is a question by Chitarth, who's asking, other than kitchen, what's the one aspect that is most difficult to get right while being an entrepreneur? So besides getting the skill sets right, I mean, we've been talking a lot about skill sets, but what Chitarth is asking is, besides that, what's that one skill that you always constantly see yourself focusing on?
It's the finance, money.
It's a
You have to understand. You have to understand money. No
yeah.
point working day out, in out, and it's like a tennis match. You see money coming, going out, money coming, nothing for you. So you have to understand the finance.
Very well said. Then we have a student, Amrita, who's asking, is there any certain way to perceive what customers want and demands in culinary world? As if there are
Uh,
various ways to do this in the corporate world. So I think that's a very good question, Amrita. I must compliment that. So what she's asking is that, whereas the corporate world, when you look at other industries, there are mechanisms to tell you what customers want. What is the best tool that you've used in your experience to understand what your customer wants?
okay, so I think it's the same rules which apply to food industry as well. You need to constantly be upstream, or educate yourself on what's going on around you. And you see, if you look ahead of the more successful business or the more successful restaurant, and what are the customers wanting, why are they going to that place and not to yours? So I think the same basic rules apply. And you should read a lot, which, when I say that, I mean industry literature. You should be aware of what's going around, what's happening around you. And with our business, it can happen, especially with chefs, that uh, you you get a bit egoistic. You think you know it all, or you think what you know is probably the right thing. But I think if we keep the ego aside and try to understand the market better, you can be a better chef, a better entrepreneur.
Lovely. All right. So then there's another question by one of our students, Vibhanshu, which I'm going to try and summarize because Vibhanshu, that's a lovely long question. To sum it up, what Vibhanshu is asking is that, there's been a great amount of impact of veganism and gluten allergies and intolerance towards gluten. How has that, in your opinion, impacted Indian food? And for that matter, how is Indian food or Indian cuisine restaurants responding to that? Because you talked about this in your dialogue as well, Chef.
Yes, I think veganism is huge. I mean, if you underestimate, and I'm talking about UK, if you underestimate, you're fooling yourself. It's huge in the UK, and I'm sure it'll, filter through to India as well. It's slightly difficult because we love our dairy in India, uh, but it is happening. It does mean a lot of changes. Now, by law in the UK, you have to mention, there are 13 allergens which they tell us about, which you have to mention if any of those 13 allergens are in your dish. So it's no longer an era where the chef puts in whatever he feels like, on that day. So every standard recipe has to be there. We have to have a list of ingredients, mention in the menu which any of the allergens, which obviously mainly you talk about gluten there. So yes, so I think it does impact. You, as a chef, you can't use the same flair in cooking which you are used to. You have to be very aware of this. And especially with Indian food, if you talk about, veganism is a big thing. North India, especially if you talk about North Indian cuisine, everywhere there's paneer, dairy, cream, butter everywhere. So to avoid all that, I think if you move towards south, you're better off. Uh, but cooking Indian food without dairy is a big challenge.
That's true. Well, we wait for the day when we can have pure vegan restaurants in India as well, because I think it'll push us to recreate and reimagine ourselves and how we look at Indian food.
Yes.
So, Chef, we have a question from Shubham who's asking that, so Indian food is generally, and you've been talking about this in some of your responses, that, and even in your dialogue where you mentioned that Indian food typically, traditionally is overcooked. We all know there are theories behind it. Typically it's either to do with the killing of bacteria, or it's just been an age-old recipe which requires that much cooking. So what Shubham would like to know is, English people don't eat overcooked food, as we all know. So how has your restaurant responded to that? How's your approach to cooking responded to that?
So now you see, when you talk to me today, it's a very different world. I stopped overcooking vegetables 25 years ago, and I used to, cook the way an Englishman would cook, but obviously use all the spices and everything else, but not cook too much. Uh, and I was always criticized by traditionalist who said, "Ye kya kachi sabji pakda diye na." But then I've stuck to that. It's much more, customer is much more aware now. So for now, it's much easier. But yes, initially it used to be tough. It used to be tough.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So we have a question from Dipanita, who's asking, "What is the biggest risk that you've ever taken, chef? If that's a secret you're willing to disclose, what's the biggest risk you've taken in your career?"
So, the business, the financial responsibility of the business I used to work for, I took over. And from being one of the employees, I became an employer, which is a huge risk I took. But having worked there and having that team around me, I was confident I'll pull through. But as I said, I didn't learn any entrepreneurship. It fell upon me, and then I had to retrain myself. So it's always been a learning process. Initially I did many mistakes because your mindset is different, your thinking is different. You always think as a chef, but then you have to think of as a cost controller and things like that, and you have to be a fantastic HR manager to be able to manage the team you're working with and all that. So I took over overnight, and that was probably the biggest risk I ever took, but probably the most rewarding step as well.
Okay, wonderful. Then I think we have one last final question, and which is, if you look back, what did it take you to become a successful entrepreneur? Though I think this question's come in a few forms, but if you want to just quickly review that for us, chef.
So you have to be connected with food, right? So I can only talk about a restaurant where I work or which I own or run, that you have to be connected with food every day. So what you did yesterday is important, but what you do today is crucial. So if you want to be successful on the long run, you have to run the place as if there's no tomorrow, today is the day.
Seize the moment. I think
Seize the
that's
moment.
very,
Yeah,
very
that's it.
important.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just gonna students. I think I've tried my absolute level best of covering everyone's question. Please let me know if anyone's question has not been answered, because we'd like to
Daily routine. They want to know what is the daily routine, chef.
Okay, so you see, even at this age, and I'm 50, 55 and plus, I work 60 hours a week. Well, I used to before this COVID. So, which is a lot of hard work. So I start a bit late compared to other people, maybe other professions. But yes, I'm at the restaurant for at least 8 to 10 hours, involved in everything. I'm still actively cooking, and so my day is structured mainly cooking around, and then obviously meeting customers whom I tend to know after all these years, and then obviously other aspects of management. So I have a designated hour for each element of the business, which I tend to look at every day.
All right. Then we have a question from our student Rahul, who is asking, being a chef patron, opening up a restaurant with one's own fund is not possible. What other sources of finance do you look for, as bankroll usually isn't an option? So I think what he's asking is, besides the banking and one's own funds, is there any other?
So obviously, if you have a good business plan, there is private finance available. But what a modern way again of doing it. And you should be willing to share your ownership of the place. Crowdfunding is fantastic. So you can ask your friends, your family members, or extended family, or whomever to invest in your business. Small amounts, but and accordingly you share your ownership of the business with and crowdfunding can be a good way of starting it off.
Excellent. All right.
There was a question, chef. You have created many dishes. Could you elaborate on one of your favorite dishes and how you got to do it?
Yes, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to work with a lot of different kinds of ingredients, being in the UK. But it's hard to pinpoint to one dish. What I've always stuck is that, I've never gone away from the standard or authentic recipes too much. So what I've tried to do usually is I'll take an exotic cut of meat or fish or seafood and game and try to do it, authentic Indian style, which traditionally people probably wouldn't eat in India, like razor clams or mussels or things like that. Uh, People in India wouldn't usually eat. So creating dishes with these as main ingredients, giving it an Indian touch, has probably been my little contribution to this field.
Could you name a dish specific? I've eaten in a restaurant, all dishes are exotic. And I think your lamb chops were done differently, but they were outstanding. Just name one dish to us to understand what it goes into creating this traditional modern cuisine dish.
So a dish which was very popular or still is in my restaurant is a wild boar jungle curry.
Right? Just tell us more about it, chef.
So it's obviously wild boar meat, but we cook it the way we cook jungle curry in Rajasthan. And
Sorry. All right. Do we have? Okay, so Uday, we have one last question, which is by our student Uday. He'd like to know how you cook the wild boar curry. I mean, if you could just elaborate on it.
okay, so if you know jungle curry, it's basic curry where you mainly put everything all together. Onion, pyaj, lasan, everything, and all the spices all together. I could, if you email, I could send you email you the recipe as well. But so
If you
I'll
can
put it
share
into
it
one
with
pot.
us.
Yeah, I could. Yes, definitely, I will. I'll share it with you.
Great. All right, so if there are no other questions, then let's. One second. Yeah. All right. Folks, thank you so much, Chef. It has been somewhat of an honor to have you with us. And I think you would agree with me. I don't think we could have asked for a far more interactive and engaging session. We've thoroughly enjoyed this. It has been a privilege and an honor to have you with us. We had you with us, I remember, about 5.5 years ago. I don't know if you recall coming to our institute, but we remember the time when you visited us, saw our students, and we look forward to hosting you very soon, hopefully under better circumstances, of course. And we wish you and your restaurants all the very best, because at the end of the day, this is what we get inspired from the most. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I could ask all the students to give a round of applause to our chef.
Thank you.
Unmute your.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I shall be sending you the link of the recording very soon, chef. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes,